Mr. Makwan for this analysis which you have made, which is very interesting and at the same time quite novel. Using the framework of the nation, Mr. Makwan very clearly brought to us the whole point of intersectionality. The intersectionality between caste, gender, and class, and at the same time, very clearly drawing attention to the fact that while one has been talking about the nation, for nearly 70 years now, at the same time, how this nation hasn't really taken root. That caste, which has been existing in different ways, in different forms, even as has been evolving over the last 4,500 years, the fact that caste is still predominant, maybe in slightly different ways than it was prevalent in the ancient times, but nevertheless the fact that it is the strong basis of the identity that is there in this country. I like what you said in terms of the fact that the nation is a lie, caste is a reality. The constitution doesn't rule, caste does. Our last speaker for this afternoon is Ms. Cynthia, who is a Dalit activist, an independent researcher, and who writes on the intersectionality between caste, gender, and works from a gender perspective. She's the president of the TEDS Trust and Dalit Women's Network for Solidarity. She currently works as a consultant, government and community relations at the International Justice Mission. She has worked before this as a state program director, Mahila Samakya Karnataka project with the government of India, and worked on the empowerment of women through education. She was a member of the expert committee for redrafting the Panchayati Raj Act of 1993, which was set up under the Ministry of Panchayat Raj and Rural Development, Government of Karnataka. And she's also previously worked with a new entity for social action. Thank you very much.
I don't know whether you're all very tired after long hours of listening to very lively and interesting presentations. I asked to go last on this panel because I wanted to integrate what was said before me into what I had to share. Because what I have to share this afternoon is really a work in progress. As Martin has so eloquently shown us, the nation of India is a work in progress, and it is still not become a reality. And what is the reason that it is a work in progress? It is because we have not fully understood what constitutes our nation, and that the foundational identity of our nation still at some level continues to be caste. So all the plans that have been laid for development fall under this, fall because of this problem of lack of understanding of the building blocks of what constitutes Indian society. And when I started off my career 30 years ago, perhaps as a journalist actually, and then moved from being a journalist into the social sector as a communicator, one of the things that I learned after some years was that I seemed to be articulating the women's question very well. So that gave me a lead to start working seriously on the issue of women. And so I used to write and speak on these issues, and did rather well for myself at one level, I thought. At somewhere there was I was always puzzled why institutional identities did not seem to stick on me very well. This morning one of the speakers was saying that some of the best scoring students are those who will not question the content of what they are learning. That's why they have very high marks. Now, I am obviously, I used to ask a lot of questions in class, but obviously I also spoke things and made inconvenient comments in places where I was working perhaps. And so, an institutional identity wouldn't stick. And it was only, in the process of applying for a very high position for which I aspired because of my training and background and experience, doing very well in the interview and discovering that a lady who had exactly 1 year experience and a PhD got that job, which I thought I would be actually walking into. Then started a series of questions. And some of you who have read my article on countercurrents I have referred to this incident. But that's when actually I realized there's something about me I had not known. I was about 40 years old, but I never knew that I had Dalit content to my ancestry. Believe this or not, it's the fact. Because when you are in a community where parents are educated, you're going to the best schools, you consider yourself as part of a privileged community because your grasp of the language is very good, your father's an engineer, that sort of thing. You never question the reality of your life. But here's one thing that I knew that I was entitled to this position and I didn't get it. Why? Somewhere in here, one word Dalit fell on my ear in the context of this discussion. So then I had to stop and think, was I really a Dalit? Is there anything to do, that got anything to do with me? And this actually then set off a very strong, powerful sense of search and brought me to a situation of understanding where I realized that yes, there was Dalit. It's not entirely Dalit ancestry. I do have other ancestry as well, which is not Dalit. But two of my grandparents, one grandparent each on either side, were Dalit. But that was enough for this society to, even though I did not know, and none of my family or parents ever even hinted that such a reality was there, and I had not personally experienced any discrimination whatsoever. I had experienced discrimination without my knowledge by a system which is so it's so insidious you don't understand. And so I really understood then that despite your studying in the best colleges, going abroad, coming, speaking and writing so articulately, still as an establishment will not see you as anything other, than the Dalitness or the color of your skin. And so it added, believe me, a new dimension, a fourth dimension to my social understanding, my social analysis, which is already quite accomplished because of my years of grassroots experience and work. And one of the things that I immediately began to question was, why did this women's movement with which I had worked so strongly keep me, in a sense, exclude me from certain things? And that's when I wrote this article called the Dalit Women Ask the Indian Feminist Some Searching Questions. That article is also there on Countercurrents. If you can access it, you can read. So the reality, and this was written years ago. I think these questions were raised maybe 7-8 years back. But only now these questions are being taken on board by feminism in India. There is a need for us to really search for a new language, because the term feminism doesn't begin to incorporate any of the life experiences. The lived experiences of Dalit women don't figure in the feminist analysis of our society. Because though we have very active and very vibrant feminist movement, of which I have been a part and don't wish to negate that, it has also been a part of who I am. It's also the fact that, after all these years of working in the movement, people still see you as a Dalit activist. You are called a Dalit activist. I never claimed this activist Dalit name was stuck on me by people from outside. So this is the way in which people tend to perceive you, and this is not my experience alone. Even other senior activists, my sister Ruth Manorama has said the same thing to me. One senior feminist actually told her, "You Dalit women are good activists. We are the thinkers." So this is what the intellectual reality, the intellectual pride of, and I have had other senior Indian feminists say, we are also talking about Dalit women. You're not excluding them from us. But my point is, I can speak. No, why do you have to speak for me? Why do you appropriate my language or my voice? Have you lived my life? Do you know what it means for my sisters and daughters to go in search of water and get sexually harassed in the process? Do your daughters ever face that situation? Do your children or children from your community have to, have only one thing to aspire to, and that is to become sexual slaves? because you're born into that community. You don't have to do that, so you don't know. What gives you the right to say that I'm also talking about you? So this has been the experience. So it has been my search in the past few years to develop a language, to find new words, to understand the struggle of Dalit women. Even the Dalit movements, I'm sorry to say, with due respect to organizers here, even the mainstream Dalit movements have not mainstream Dalit women in the movements, in the leadership or in the rank and file. The way Ambedkar did in his movements, in his trade unions, he organized the women into trade unions. He had large women's groups which were supporting him in his work and were part of his work foregrounded the situation of women. Because as you know, one of the important reasons for him to, not the only, but one of the important reasons for him to resign from the cabinet was the reception given to his draft of the Hindu Code Bill, which talked about women's rights, property rights. So the way in which the Dalit leadership that was offered by Ambedkar to this country, the way he imagined the movement, subsequent people have not taken the movement forward in exactly that way, though he continues to be an inspiration to them. So I think it's important that we be very critical, not only of the society around us, but also self-critical about our own community and our own mistakes. We need to be able to do that. And in order to be able to do that, we have to be able to critique others as well. I mean, when we are self-critical about us, I think we have the right to be critical of others as well. And so that is why my critique of Indian feminism has developed in this direction. And as I said, I asked to go last because I was trying to find common threads on which I can tie up whatever arguments were coming across the panel. And I also was very attentively participating in this morning's session on higher education. And I see a lot of congruence in what was said in the morning as well as what is being said now. And that is that the establishment, I think all of us know of a writer, Bell Hooks, and she writes a book, Change Comes from the Margins. No? That is, she says the change comes from the margins. So it was Ambedkar who was on the margins of the Indian National Congress, not even part of it. But he was the one who brought the change in the constitution, which totally brings a totally different imagining of nation compared to the imagination of the nation that the mainstream Indian National Congress had. I have written about this differential understanding in an article known as India, the Idea of Nation and the Subaltern Indian Woman. That article also you will find in Countercurrents. But very briefly, the ruling class understanding or imagination of India as a nation was Brahminical, patriarchal, and a feminine context. That is exemplified by the context by the use of the terms Bharat Mata and by the song, that anthem that is called Vande Mataram. So it is, she is fertile, she is, upper caste, married, Sumangali, that kind of imagination. And the people who are fighting, that the present dispensation which is ruling the country has this understanding of purity of the nation, which we have very clearly challenged. That the Dalit woman or the Adivasi woman or the trans person is a perpetual outsider to this understanding, so that this is a nation which is Brahminical and patriarchal in its understanding, and anything that these others produce is known as atrocity literature. Now, Brother Martin McMahon is guilty of producing very great amount of atrocity literature, because the right-wing dispensation right now talks about any of these knowledge productions of the common people of this country, and which talks about their sufferings or their injustices. The term is atrocity literature. You should really Google this term and learn from where it is coming and why it is being used. Because we really, at this point, are at a time where there is this struggle between these two understandings of what is a nation, do we have a nation or not, Or are we all common citizens and do we have common rights or not? Who are my people, who are not my people? I think this is a very, very important understanding. And also there is a reason why Rohit Vemula happened at this point. I think we should understand 60 years down the line, it's only now that children from the marginalized background have come up to university and are able to come to study PhDs in sciences. This is the reason why when this foreign particle comes into this chaste space of knowledge production, rabbinical knowledge production, they are treated as outsiders and are forced to either commit suicide or totally fail and leave the institution. So there is this entire struggle that is happening. Similarly, in the movements, in the feminist movements, the Dalit women's struggles have not. Just one example will tell you why I think so. We all know what happened in the case of Nirbhaya. Does anyone remember any women's group taking any position at all on the Kailanji incident, other than Dalit youngsters? This will tell you, while sexual violence is not violence if it happens to the it only happens to non-Dalits. Dalits and Adivasis, they're subhumans, they're outside the pale, they're others. They are not worth taking up as mainstream incidents. So this has been the mindset, this has been the way in which things have gone. And if you say it, you're either anti-national or you're generating atrocity literature. This is the reality, and therefore we really need to seriously question as young people what we are taking our country into in the future. What kind of country are we making for ourselves? This imagination of a country which is a country which will lead the world in its philosophy, in its spirituality, in its understanding of political. It was an experiment. India is called a grand experiment. At a time when the nation state in Europe was under huge challenge, it was India's example, to set up, and communism was spreading rapidly around the world. India was a unique, nation which came out as a, constitutional democracy and as a people's republic. So I think that lofty ideal we have not been able to live up to in the past, but it's in the hands of the younger people to understand this fractured society that we live in, the ideology that makes these things survive and continue, and the fact that we are the ones who will have to make the choices to make this different. And in this, all the marginalized sections of our country, all of whom are equal societies and equal citizens, and are granted freedom from discrimination by our constitution, we have these responsibility. We have the right to struggle for a nation which is united and strong and secular and non-discriminatory. And I would also like to add that in a context where learning is denied, people often feel that economic progress and education are the two ways in which to change the destiny of people, the nations. I want to seriously question that. We know very well that that is not the case, that people who come up to, we've heard Manisha's example, I have shared my own example, we have Rohit Vemula's example before us. So education or economic progress is not the way in which we build this community or this people together or form a nation. What really brings us together is a shared ideology or a shared identity which goes beyond that of caste. And many years ago, almost 100 years ago, because Ambedkar had a long innings,